Welcome to Founders Day in our 180th year, 2021. Welcome to those boys sitting in their tutor groups, the grade 8s to 11s. Welcome to the matrics sitting here in the hall in front of me. And welcome to those sitting at home, old boys, friends of Wynberg, parents watching our Founders Day ceremony from the comfort of their homes. We will now have the unveiling of the flags and the playing of the national anthem, so can we please stand?
Thank you. You may be seated. Good morning, Mr. Westvig, special guests, old boys, parents, and young Wynberg men. What a pleasure it is to welcome you all to this very special yet different Founders Day ceremony. This ceremony forms part of the Wynberg Boys High School 180th celebrations and is also an integral part of Heritage Week, culminating in usual times with the final winter fixtures against Sachs and then the Old Boys dinner on Saturday evening, which unfortunately this year will not be taking place. It's wonderful to have you all joining us here today, albeit most of you remotely. The past 2 years have been very trying for schools such as ours. We rely heavily on the building of a feeling of brotherhood amongst our boys through events such as assemblies, social gatherings, sports fixtures, cheering, and traditional gatherings such as Founders Day, prize giving, and valedictory, etc., etc. These are occasions when we gather as a Wynberg community and celebrate that special Wynberg gees and our brotherhood. Because almost 50% of our current school population have not experienced a normal school year, we face the possibility that the significance of these traditions are going to be forgotten and consequently disappear from the ethos of the school. That's why I've been asked to explain the origins and the significance of today's ceremony, particularly for the benefit of our younger students and their families. Founders Day is both a celebration and a memorial service. We gather to celebrate the founding of the school 180 years ago and to remember the tens of thousands of people, living and deceased, who have contributed to the development of this school and making it what it is today. On a more somber note, it is also an occasion when we remember the very special group of young men who never had the opportunity to further contribute or even to enjoy and celebrate the successes of the school once they'd left school. They are the young men from this school who died in the major conflicts in which South Africa was involved in the 20th century. You might rightly ask, what is the relevance of a Founders' Day ceremony? After all, those who died were fighting a Eurocentric war, and it was a First World conflict which had very, very little to do with Africa and South Africa. In our 175th anniversary book, Brothers in an Endless Chain, the section on transformation also raises and addresses these questions. My response is that I've always considered this ceremony to be as relevant today as it ever was. I say this because I don't see the ceremony in a national or international context, but rather in the context of the Wynberg Boys Schools. The members of the Wynberg community who were fortunate enough to have survived these wars and these conflicts made a solemn promise to their comrades who died in combat, never to forget them, and this is what we're doing today. We are honoring the incredible bravery and sacrifice made by young men from the school, many of them even younger than the senior matrics who are sitting with us here today. They went to war and they paid the ultimate sacrifice. In this ceremony, we also remember and acknowledge the painful period in our history when people of certain races were excluded from attending the school. Many of their descendants now attend Wynberg and are present in this ceremony today. But Founders Day is more than a memorial service. It's also a way of celebrating everyone who's made a contribution to Wynberg over the last 180 years. They include Wynberg boys, their parents, teaching and support staff, community members, and other benefactors. They are male and female, wealthy and poor, people from all walks of life, and of every color and creed. Their contribution have made Wynberg what it is today. Their contributions have been significant, and we remember and honor them all today. Yesterday, in the junior school flag-raising ceremony, Mr. Polman, who's with us today, said the following words. He says, "We've risen to the challenges, social and economic, throughout our history. We continue to plan, think ahead, and ensure we continue to be the school for committed young men." I'd like to finish off my address by doing the Founders' Day reading and the Founders' Day prayer. Now is the time of the year when the members of the Wynberg Boys School community pause to remember the old boys of this school whose headstones are scattered in military cemeteries in distant lands. It is gratifying to know that they have not receded into the faceless anonymity of the distant past. Would you please bow your heads in prayer? Lord God, help us to remember all the old boys of this school who have been given their lives in times of war so that we may live in peace and enjoy our lives. Grant that we may be worthy of their sacrifice. We give you thanks for their lives, for their example, and for their courage. God, who gives us so much, give us one more thing, a grateful heart for the sacrifices of those who did not return. Grant that the boys of this school may live out there today and that their lives will enhance ours. Amen.
Ecclesiasticus chapter 44. Let us now praise men of renown and our fathers in their generation. The Lord hath wrought great glory through his magnificence from the beginning. Such as have borne rule in their dominions, men of great power, and endued with their wisdom, shewing forth in the prophets the dignity of the prophets, and ruling over the present people, and by the strength of wisdom instructing the people in most holy words. Such as by their skill sought out musical tunes and published canticles of the scriptures. Rich men in virtue studying beautifulness, living at peace in their houses. All these have gained glory in their generations, and were praised in their days. They that were born of them have left a name behind them, that their praises might be related. And there are some of whom there is no memorial, who are perished as if they had never been, and are become as if they had never been born, and their children with them. But these were men of mercy, whose godly deeds have not failed. Good things continue with their seed. Their posterity are a holy inheritance, and their seed hath stood in the covenants. And their children for their sakes remain forever. Their seed and their glory shall not be forsaken. Their bodies are buried in peace, and their name liveth unto generation and generation. Let the people shew forth their wisdom, and the church declare their praise.
God Bless Africa by Wayne Visser. God bless Africa, for she is the seed of humanity, and I am the future through her. When a root sprout, I am born, and as the leaves unfurl, I grow. When the branches spread, I learn, and as the flowers bud, I bloom. God bless Africa, for she is the fire of creation, and I am transformed through her. When problems loom, I am challenged, and when solutions hide, I search. When suffering strikes, I ache, and when relief calls, I answer. God bless Africa, for she is the tree of life, and I am alive through her. When the roots are dry, I thirst, and when the trunk is cut, I bleed. As the seasons turn, I change, and as the fruits ripen, I flourish.
In 1984 saw the arrival of two key people at Wynberg. Mr. Rowan Algie began his work as the 11th headmaster of the school, and Carl Westvig began his high school career as a very ordinary Standard 6 pupil. By 1988, South Africa was in desperate straits, and Mr. Algie commented on three crises that had enveloped both the school and the country. We were in a financial crisis with interest rates around 20% and an economic boycott from the international community. There was an education crisis with teacher morale being at its lowest in 27 years. And there was a security crisis with the armed struggle against the government in full swing. The school regularly received bomb threats, while bomb blasts were a reality in urban South Africa. However, during these 5 years, from 1984 to the end of 1988, the 5 years at Wynberg, Carl Westvig matured into a young man who reveled in challenges and rose through the ranks to become one of the finest head prefects Wynberg has ever had. When he matriculated at the end of 1988, he left the school together with legendary teacher Alf Moras, and it was Carl who, as head boy, had the honor of presenting Alf with his farewell gift. In his matric year, Carl achieved numerous awards: the W.E. Bowden Prize for Mathematics, the Old Boys Maths Prize, Edward Wise Bursary, the Old Boys Award for the top academic in Standard 10, life membership of the Old Boys Union, the Andrew Feinstein Cup for the best all-rounder, Abelson Cup for the pupil who did the most for the school, and in his matric final exams achieved academic honors with distinctions in maths and science. And remember, that was in the days when Wynberg probably only achieved 4 or 5 distinctions per year. He was the head prefect, the academic of the year, and to top it off, earned a gold Supera Moras Award, the All-Rounders Award. His is one of only 2 names on both the head prefect and academic of the year boards. In addition, he was a member of the school's athletics, cross-country, and squash teams, earning blues for squash. One could never have predicted that looking at his grade 8 year, his Standard 6 year. Since leaving school, he's had an extremely successful career in finance, his company being rated one of the best in the world, and has also served a term as chairman of the Old Boys Union. He has continued to contribute to his old school, and it is with pleasure that I welcome him to deliver the John McNaughton address at the 2021 Founders Day, celebrating our 180th birthday.
Good day, Mr. Duval, parents, fellow staff members, Wynberg men, and other people affiliated to Wynberg. My first job was at 5 years old, going back to when I was in grade 1, in a little town called Stompnius. I was in an English medium class where there were roughly 25 students in an Afrikaans school, but in a single class with one teacher. And the teacher, needless to say, didn't have too much to do because she spent most of her time doing the crossword puzzles. And in those days, you could do the crossword puzzle, submit it in the competition, and see if you won some money. And being the youngest in the class and the only grade 1, my job was to go and post the letter. And so I didn't get a lot of education in grade 1. I come from a fairly middle-class family with a father who was an engineer who traveled every year, and as a result, my sister went to 6 schools in 7 years. So every year she went to a new school, and in my primary school career, I went to 4 different schools. And what did this teach me? It teaches you, for one, independence. It teaches you to make new friends. It teaches you that you need to make your own way in some form. So I arrived at Fishhook Primary School and in grade 2 and was given extra reading and extra homework every single evening to catch up because I knew very little at that point. But I had very happy childhood memories, from catching snakes in Fishhook to catching tadpoles in Durbanville to catching scorpions in De Hoek and Piketberg. So we had lots of time on our hands, we had friends, and we had lots of fun. When I arrived at Fishhook Primary School in grade 5, in those days, 5, 6, and 7, was the first time I spent 3 years in the same school at the same time. And that gave me a bit of a base, and I learned some sport, and I improved my academics, enough to get me to Wynberg. And we were very delighted to join Wynberg as a school in those days. I arrived in 1984 at Littlewood House, trying to prove myself. And I had my first lesson in disappointment when I arrived at the school, because my heart's ambition was to be a doctor. And at that point, you needed to have Latin. And I wasn't in the Latin stream. I wasn't in the Latin class, a 6A class. And I remember walking through the boarding school with my father at that point, and he said to me, "Don't worry, son, where there's a will, there's a way." And I managed to get into the Latin class. And after the first term, I got a paltry 33% for Latin and realized that Amo, Masamat, that type of stuff wasn't for me. And in fact, my learning was that anything that required too much studying was a challenge. So I focused my efforts on maths, science, things that were easy to understand and develop. And you just got to find your way through the process. So come grade 10, I dropped history and I dropped Latin and moved on to accounting and other things. So these are all learning experiences I went through. I decided I wanted to play Western Province squash, and it was a burning ambition. So every afternoon, and the beauty of being in Littlewood and being around a school like this is you always have lots of mates. You have people you can grab and go and play squash with. So I remember every afternoon, after rugby, after cricket, after any sport that I had, I was out in the squash court for half an hour to an hour knocking balls and just building my skill sets. But it wasn't a simple process, because now Sunday mornings is when they had squad training. And I lived in Fishhook, so it ended up being a 5-kilometer walk on my own at 14 years old, down to Fishhook Station, catching a train through to either Claremont or to Rondebosch, walking up to UCT, and spending a couple of hours doing squad training, and arriving back lunchtime on a Sunday. So it was a bit of a lonely journey. But it really hit home when I played in a tournament at Constantia And it was a 3-day tournament. Once again, walked to the station, got on the train, caught the train through to Constantia, and managed to win the plate final. Not the main event, but the plate final. And was awarded with a Pro Kennex squash racket, which was wooden in those days, but I was delighted. But then wandering down from Constantia squash courts down to Witterboomer Station, you have this overwhelming sense of sadness in that there was no one there to witness it with you. I didn't have my parents or siblings, and you walk down in tears trying to work out what's this all about. And once again, the learning then was, we aren't islands. We're there for each other. We're social animals. We want to be recognized. We want to have people witness our failures and successes. But it also builds resilience. It builds a level of understanding of what disappointment is and how to deal with it, which is important later in life, and I'll get to that later on. So here we talk about education. Wynberg's an education institution. Education, only one component is about marks and knowledge. It's much broader. It's about building fundamentals. And we're forced to be here to some extent because our parents tell us to and because the government tells us to. But we don't understand until later in life the value of the education system and the time we spend at school. So I'm a CEO of a business, and we spend a lot of our time looking for talent. And when we look for talent, we look at probably 4 components. The first one is marks. Marks are important because it shows your ability to learn. It shows your application of knowledge. The second part is that we look for is character. So what have you developed? What disappointments have you been through, and how have you developed your character over time and dealt with disappointment? And that leads into emotional intelligence, EQ. So whilst marks might get you into a job, what determines your success through the job is emotional intelligence. And we look at cultural fit. So how do you operate with other people? Are you constructive? Are you destructive? Are you a positive influence or a negative influence in the environment? And you need to show that and have developed those skills at some point in your life. And finally, common sense. What is your general knowledge and your broader understanding of the world? As they say, common sense isn't always so common. So these are things that are important when you embarking on a career, and certainly things we look for. And that comes from all your experiences at school. It comes from the sports field. It comes from group projects. It comes from a host of other activities. So my message to you today is, as Wynberg men, recognize the value of school. Recognize the experiences you go through now, because that sets the foundation and the fundamentals for the future. And you only understand that often later in life when you look back. So Wynberg's roughly 180 years old as a school, and many, many, many Wynberg men have been through the school. And a lot of the traditions that you have today and the processes was built on those people there before you. Likewise, you should be a catalyst for the future as well in the school. So think about how you can contribute back to the school. Once you leave school, life happens. You do go and study. You build a career. You have families, many of you. And you sort of get lost in the broader system and society. But find your way back. Come and support the school either through service. We all have different means and different skills. Support committees, support at sports events, mentoring of students. There's a whole bunch of things you can do. So one of the initiatives we're launching in the Old Boys Union alongside the school is something called the Legacy Fund. And there are many students who'd like to come to Wynberg who can't afford to, so we need to build some form of long-term scholarship. There are always a long list of infrastructure projects, like you've just built an engineering block, that will always be required. And you also want to make sure the school is financially sustainable, that it doesn't depend on other parties, like government funding. So this legacy fund will be launched shortly, and the idea is to contribute back so that many, many Wynberg men coming after you can enjoy the same benefits and if not more, going forward. So I'd like to say we are brothers in an endless chain, and putting back into the school makes this chain stronger and longer. I wish you all the best, and especially in these tumultuous times. Thank you.
Good day. Thank you, Mr. Westwig, for sharing your experiences, for sharing those words, and sharing your time to address us on this special day. Thank you for all the work you have done and continue to do for the school. Your work as part of the Wynberg Old Boys Union and all the charity and community work that you are actively involved in. We can only be thankful for your contribution to the school and the world we live in today. Please accept the small gift of thanks on behalf of the school, your school, and our school in addressing us today and for all that you do.
Roll of Honor. In memory of former pupils of Wynberg Boys High School who fell in wartime conflict, the inscription reads, "At morning and evening we shall remember them." World War I, 1914 to 1918. J. B. Abrahams, E. J. Brody, A. K. Carstens, W. A. Carstens, B. Cohen, G. T. Cornwell, R. Duncan, C. H. Elliott, D. Elliott, E. Elliott, T. A. Philby, W. J. Fish, M. S. Fox, H. T. Garrett, C. L. Giddy, C. C. Gordon, R. L. Graham, E. M. Greenwood, H. L. Harcourt, E. W. Hitchcock, C. E. Horn, K. T. Coward, J. C. Hurlin, D. B. Hudson, N. Keppel-Jones, B. Leake, C. Loxton, C. R. Lucas, J. R. Martin, J. H. McKnight, E. J. Mills, W. H. Milner, G. V. Noakes, J. E. Poole, E. G. Powell, W. Prince, C. H. Salmon, R. O. Schwartz, G. G. Scott, S. Scott, R. R. Short, W. Solomon, W. I. Thompson, C. A. Vipin, J. E. Waters. Rand Rebellion, 1922, W. A. Kirsten. World War II, 1939 to 1945, E. C. Adams, A. J. Bates, R. Beckwith, R. B. Bell, C. Bouchett, J. F. L. Bernard, J. S. Cartwright, J. F. Cutting, R. Daniels, J. S. Dulbridge. I. Difford. A. Dubber. A. Earp Jones. C. A. Friedlander. J. G. Graham. A. Heft. K. Jacobs. H. A. Job. G. Josephson. A. Khan. N. Card. L. Coppate. D. Langton. F. Lowe Delaray. P. Masterson Smith. D. McIntyre. G. B. Macmillan. H. Miller. R. F. Moorman. J. S. Parsons. I. L. Posner. J. Ritchie. F. Scrimjar. Q. Scrimjar. J. Sitzkorn. R. Staveni. D. Tattersall. J. Tom. J. H. Thwaites. S. M. Upton. E. Van Shade. P. Vervat. B. Watson Smith. C. Wheeler. W. R. White. N. F. Wilkinson. D. Williams. E. Wise. R. A. Wittenberg. L. Wood. Border conflict. D. Barry Smith. G. Bricknell. R. Davies. N. Pattenden. Our dedication to all Wynberg generations. Wynberg Boys Junior and High School acknowledge all Wynberg families, including the families of Wynberg boys who have attended Wynberg after the opening up of the school to all from 1991 onwards, who have been affected by loss of life, injury, and exile during the years of conflict and the liberation struggle to end apartheid in Southern Africa.
Pandemic Tribute. The COVID-19 pandemic has wrought havoc around the world, claiming the lives of millions of people and forcing lockdowns where millions more have lost their jobs. People's lives and livelihoods have been terribly affected, and the Wynberg community has not been spared. Today, we also remember our fellow Wynberg brothers and the Wynberg community who have lost their lives or loved ones to COVID-19. And we honor those who are selflessly on the front lines battling this terrible virus. We pray for the ending of this pandemic and for peace and healing for all who have been affected.
To fallen soldiers let us sing, where no rockets fly nor bullets wing. Our broken brothers let us bring to the mansions of the Lord. No more bleeding, no more fight, no prayers pleading through the night. Just divine embrace, eternal light in the mansions of the Lord, where no mothers cry and no children weep. We will stand and guard though the angels sleep. Oh, through the ages safely keep the mansions of the Lord.
Thank you for attending our Founders Day ceremony in our 180th year. Although it might not have been the Founders Day that we've become accustomed to, hopefully we have kept some of the traditions alive, even though it is in an online forum. Thank you for attending, and please stand as the stage party leaves.